Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Village of Monee's Planning and Zoning meeting of October 19th, 2022. Let's rise for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Besenhausen,
Here.
Commissioner Brophy,
Here.
Commissioner Cope, Commissioner Lanier,
Here.
Commissioner Lindstrom,
Here.
Commissioner Trevino,
Here.
Commissioner West.
Here.
Awesome.
All right. I need a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting of September 21st, 2022.
I'll make the motion.
I will second it.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brophy,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Besenhausen.
Yes. All right. Open to the public. Is there anyone that is here for open to the public? All right. We will move on to public hearing. I need a motion to open the public hearing for Vortman USA's zoning ordinance and map amendment application for the property located at 25715 South Ridgeland.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Besenhausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Brophy.
Yes.
All right. So Vortman has a representative here, but I understand that Bill Barnes would like to come up and introduce him.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Move this up here a little bit. So my name is Bill Barnes. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the Village of Monee for the past year. And when I started with Monee, almost a little bit over a year ago, or less than a year ago, a big part of my job, of course, is to attract new businesses coming in. A bigger part of my job is to take the businesses that are here and try to help them find a bigger way to improve and grow their business. So I had the pleasure about 10 months ago of getting a phone call from Adrian Morel who owns Vortman Steel, which is just on an industrial drive, and who is looking for property to possibly grow his business. Long story short, we kind of looked at some different places, and he'll talk about the growth of his company and what he's got in store. So we looked at Rainbow Farms. That was one of the first places, and then so it's kind of come full circle, but timing is everything. So he'll tell you about his company, at their international company. About 3 months ago, I was at a conference in Las Vegas for businesses and retail, and I happened to be walking along the strip, and there was a couple that was trying to take a selfie with the Eiffel Tower, the mini Eiffel Tower in the background. And so I said, here, I'll do that for you. And so I got to talking to these people, and I noticed they had an accent. I said, oh, are you French? And he said, no, I'm Dutch. I said, oh, so you're from the Netherlands. That's where Vortman Steel has their company, which he'll tell you about, and you'll see video on. And I said, oh, I'm working with someone, I'm from the south of Chicago, and I'm working with a company called Vortman Steel. And he said, oh, yeah, I know that company. He said, that's a really good company. And his wife said, you know them? And he said, oh, yeah. He said, they're one of the top companies in the Netherlands. So, small world, and, you never know when you talk to people. So, having said that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Adrian Morel, and he'll tell you about Vortman Steel. And, again, they're looking for going from M1 zoning to M2, which is heavier manufacturing.
Good evening. My name is Adrian Morel. I actually bought a building here in 2014 on the corner of Industrial Drive and Whiting Way. It started off then as a support facility for the main office, which is about 150 miles west of Amsterdam. So it's right on the German border. We started off in about 1970 manufacturing machinery, which then turned into CNC machinery. So in 2005, myself and Mark Vortman got together and we put together Vortman USA, because the United States is the largest steel market in the world. One of our claim to fame is the new World Trade Center was fabricated on Vortman equipment. So, I mean, I remember when we got there, I had a few drinks that night. It was a good night. So that was the biggest order we ever actually got. So in saying that, we started off with me in a 900 square foot facility on top of the National Bank in Kankakee. And today we have about 1 million square feet under roof in the Netherlands. And given the current cost of freight, the dollar to the euro exchange rate, the lack of skilled labor, and the amount of business that we now do in the United States, we are now the #1 supplier of machinery in the markets that we serve. We felt it was time that we would start looking to manufacture in the United States. So we started looking, as Bill said, for land around here because we already have employees around here. We don't want to leave because we need those skilled employees. So the plan was to start fabrication here, look for a new facility, and we're looking to employ somewhere between about 70 and 100 people. What we do, and you'll see this when I finish this video here, but the CNC part of it, the machinery, we currently manufacture over in the Netherlands. What we want to manufacture over here is what I will call the spaghetti in between it. That would be all the roller conveyors, the material handling, and so on. All the software is proprietary. Currently, we have 60 software engineers writing our own software for us. So we can basically go grab a CAD drawing of the World Trade Center, take every nut, bolt, washer, beam, angle, channel, whatever it is, download it to our equipment. The steel comes from the mills and we spit the parts out the other end. We've gone from that point now to it's very, very difficult to get welders. It used to be easy. Now it's not. So now we've even got into robotics. And now we have at the other end, we have robotic welding systems which now weld all the beams together, put all the hardware on that's necessary. So anyway, so the plan then would be, is because the cost of freight, a container went from $6,000 to $24,000 in 2 years. Then you look at the dollar to the euro actually is in favor of the other way around right now. It's almost parity, but it's also been at 1.64. So that means I'd have to increase prices if it went back to that point by about 50%, and we know that's not going to happen. So there's price constraints, there's logistics, there's just the cost of moving things around the world today is astronomical. So hence this was driving the thoughts today. So I'm going to explain this to you now. So try the mouse. It's all right. We're having IT problems earlier on, so let's try that. Hang on a minute. Where are we? It doesn't like that. It's not switching the screens, actually.
It is not.
It worked earlier on.
Yeah, it's, there we go. Yeah.
No, you should have the smallest, put it up there.
Yeah.
You got the question.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not liking this.
It was working before? Yeah. There we go.
There we go. There we go, the mouse is working.
Okay. So as it says up on the screen here anyway, so we started manufacturing and designing CNC equipment back in the 1970s. There we go. So we actually got into the steel construction of machineries through having our own steel construction fabrication shop. So we can actually manufacture 700 tons of structural steel ourselves from our own facility using our own equipment per week. And that goes throughout Europe currently. Some of it goes across to the Caribbean islands because there are some Dutch connections there as well, but you know, Aruba and so on. But anyway, so we have the company's basically split between steel construction and steel machinery. So you can see it's privately owned. Currently have 616 employees globally. Turnover is about quarter of $250 million or 250, whatever. And about 50% of sales of machinery now is currently in the United States, hence the drive to now come over to the United States and manufacture. Here's the video. This is not our facility. This is what we manufacture. So when you see the roller conveyors and so on in between, that's what we will do.
We would recommend Portland to any future customer.
Ça se passe très très bien et on est vraiment content de notre collaboration et du matériel que nous offrons.
Немає що ми не змогли його поламати.
Другий час.
We now have 10 machines and we believe that they allow us to succeed in a competitive market.
And you come to the experience center, Steve and his team. By that moment, I was struck, I think.
That last picture is a facility in the Netherlands. There's about 1 million square feet under roof right there. So, we build the high-end machinery. We are not the cheap end. We're kind of the Cadillac. So, along with Cadillac comes the higher price, but also we can outproduce anybody. The technology that we have today is far superior than most around the world. Hence, we can probably certainly double the output from the investment that you'll get from others. So hence we tend to be more on the software side. You'll see software's mentioned quite a bit in this, but it really is also the second side of this is software is also needing the service and support, which is what is in Monee. So you get a lot of questions on software. We have a training facility. We have a showroom down there. We also have a full showroom in the United States, as well as a full showroom over in the Netherlands, which is we have one of every machine in the Netherlands. We don't do that here. It's not big enough yet. So this is where we've sold machines around the world. Obviously, there's not many in Africa because there's nothing much down there. And then the South America again. There's quite a bit of steel production down there, but they have their own supplier down there. So there's markets we still need to get into. That's the facility. So what we want to do is build. Initially, we're looking at about 100,000 square feet of fabrication space and a new office. And the plan is to then sell the building that we have down here already, and then we'll move to a new office across on Rainbow Farms. So we're looking at 3 bays, 450 feet long, about 60 feet wide. Basically, I've already gone through this. You know, we're all about automation. We pride ourselves in being able to take the data from the machinery now and give it back to the customer, and we can also explain where they can get far more output than they are currently, whether it's a labor problem, machine problem, or it's a logistics problem. And then we have the customer service, because if you don't have good customer services, you won't get the next order. These are the types of machines that we actually manufacture. All these machines are actually independent, and you bring them together with material handling, and also every site that you go to is custom. It depends whether it's a new building, whether it's an existing building, but you have to customize to get that equipment into that building. So we'll put these machines together. I'll show you in a second. And we also do standalone machines. So this is a plate machine. I don't know if you're familiar with people like the Reliance Group or Ryerson Steel and people like that. They're the people who, Ryerson have 117 plants in the US. They've standardized on Vortman plate processing machines. So that would be one of these type of machines. There we go. Oops. I hope this works now. There we go. System engineering is the configuration of machines to fit the building. Again, software. This is what we will be manufacturing. If you can see each one of those machines, they will still be currently manufactured in the Netherlands. It's the material handling that will be connecting all of those machines together is what we want to manufacture here. So it's only relatively light steel. Once we can get this part of the program together, there's no reason why we cannot ship globally from here. So we can have the machine here, material handling comes from here, so there's no reason why we can't drop ship something to Australia or wherever it's going to go. It can go out to Asia, it can go back across the pond. But either way, this gives us the flexibility then also depends on dollar to euro, where it's most efficient, most cost effective to make it. This again is how we can help the end user. They may buy our machines off us, but we're able to tie everything into the software. Even you can go back to your phone, your tablet. You can be on a business trip to Los Angeles. You can pick your phone up and go in the app, and you can see what you're producing today in your workshop, even though you're not there. This is a larger steel fabrication shop. It's again, it's just showing all the material handling. So you can see all the steel beams at the top there, the machines at the bottom. The steel fabrication side of this would be that we would then manufacture, again, those rollers, the conveyors and everything that goes to each machine. This is, we've been into this now about 10 years. So as I said, you can't get welders. So now we went into robotic welding. So now we can take a steel beam, we can have a robot come along and pick the plate up, put it where it needs to be. The other robot comes and tacks it in place, and then it goes and gets another and another and another. So this now comes at the end of those lines. This is current offices we have around the world. As you can see, you've got Monee, Illinois there, and that's where the expansion is going to be. This is probably about 20% of our total turnover. We do preventative maintenance for the equipment, which is all driven out of here. So whether it's consumables, parts, service, support, even that red tooling system, basically that's just like a vending machine. When you need a part, you go to the vending machine, you pull the part out, it tells us back here in Monee that you just took out part ABC 1, 2, 3. We replenish it, but at least that means the part is available to them immediately. So we're going to be probably 30% subscription because of software, 20% will be customer service, and 50% will probably be the equipment. That's kind of where the business model's going. These are different markets that we serve. So steel fabrication, which I just talked about. Distribution is steel service centers. Steel processing, that's always really much related to steel distribution. They look for added value. Machinery equipment, You'll see who we supply to in a moment, and we're going more into the offshoring energy because we're also developing some new pipe cutting machines, which we will manufacture here. Because we're in the throes of buying a company in Washington and another one out of Pennsylvania, and the plan would be to move that production here. So when I just mentioned the big moving equipment, Caterpillar, big customer of ours, ArcelorMittal, Reliance, Ryerson, just a few you may recognize, but all using Voortman equipment. That is our experience center in the Netherlands, so we actually allow outside companies to come and use the facility. So it's not just for our showrooms, it's a training facility, but if there's another company one down the road want to come and use the facility, we also open it up to them. And some of you may have bumped into that place, it's around the corner. You're always welcome. There's a couple of machines in there. Bill's been down there and seen them. This is just one more. This is a guy over in Phoenix, Arizona. He bought our equipment. He was doing like 3,000 tons a year. He turned it to 6,000 tons a year. He didn't have to increase his labor force, and basically he was able to grow his company just because he invested in the equipment. And so this is, I've basically explained this, but shipping costs, euro, built in America, and then you can see the amount of jobs that we're looking at. So, and that's the subsidiaries around the world. Any questions for me?
Looks good to me.
Okay, that's a good
Sorry,
start.
if I could just enter one more thing, because I know last, when we were talking about Rainbow Farms previously with another developer, was looking at one of the considerations from some of the neighbors was the constant flow of traffic, or trucks, semi-trucks, and that type of thing. Adrian, you can talk about, you know, kind of the trucks, which they work pretty much 8 to 5, Monday through Fridays. So you can talk about a little bit about that, address that, or what you see as the most amount in the 3-5 years. How many semi-trucks you'll have?
Semi-truck holds somewhere, depends on what you're doing, 20 to 40 tons of steel. There is no way that we're going to process 20 to 40 tons of steel in the first year or so a day, because it's all very, very light material. I would expect that you would probably see 2 semis a day of steel. You will see more FedEx and UPSs leaving there than anything else, because they come to us twice a day now. So there's going to be no real difference there, because that's all for the parts and the service. I would think probably down the road, 5 years from now, you might see maybe, if with materials coming in, you still be maybe 3, 4, but with the equipment going out, you may see 5, 6, maybe a day. It's never going to get any more than that. You're not looking at hundreds of, we're not Amazon across the road, let me put it that way. You know, we're going to be loading a machine, we'll load some material handling on there, and it'll just be shipped somewhere in the world. It'll either be containerized or it'll be shipped on the back of a semi. So we're not talking about a high amount of traffic here. There's a lot of smaller, lighter parts.
What would that do to the local streets along there?
I wouldn't
All the
know.
weight of the...
Well, I'm kind of hoping that you're going to tell me that. Because there's a rumor going around that you're going to be expanding that ridgeline right there and making it a little bit wider for the trucks. Which means apparently you need 15 foot off the piece of the land that we're buying. That's all I know. It's not going to be, you've got Amazon right across the road there. I'm waiting for you to tell me, because that means I can move my detention pond from there down to there, which saves me a lot of problems. So, because right now you've got drainage on the one side. On the west side of the road, you've got drainage. On the east side of Ridgeland currently, where we will be, you've got soakaway. So I'd like you to expand that and take the water away from there, because it's going to help me with my project.
I have a question. You indicated here, if the zoning amendment is approved, that gradually you would be removing the existing structures or the buildings. When you say
Yeah, everything
gradually,
that's on that particular property now would be gone.
when you say gradually, what time frame were you looking at? It just says gradually we will remove the existing buildings.
I would say 2 years from now, we would probably, well, we're still doing our due diligence. We're waiting on the engineers right now, but if you're looking to the south of that property, I would say that would be the first area that would be built. So if any part of that structures would be taken, would probably be the current home that's on there, which they don't live there anymore, but there's a house there.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a statement. Personally, this is the type of jobs America needs. Thank you for being here. We need these high-end jobs. And not only is it good for the country, it's going to be awesome for Monee. And I would appreciate it if you guys did show up.
Well, we're already here, we just want to do a little.
Oh, I mean expand. I know you're here, I mean expand.
Any other questions?
Am I allowed to ask you a question? You've done a great job of showing how awesome your company is. I understand the company. I sold steel for years. Can you tell me a little bit more about the project? What's it going to look like? Which way, are the docks going to be facing? How much noise to expect? Anything
No,
of that
you will,
nature?
virtually no noise. Everything will be inside.
The docks are expected to face which direction?
Don't know, because I still have the topography of that back. There's a pond that's got to be filled in. There was some drawings that were originally given to us by the original, what's his name, Warwick. We don't have that back yet. I mean, we would probably have the buildings facing east to west. And that would mean the office would be at the front, so that would be closest to original. So
Makes sense.
the docks would be to the east side. This is all towards
Docks
57.
Plus you only have 3 days.
On the other side, we don't necessarily use docks. We will normally have one dock now, which is great for the parts and the service things going out. Most of the time, the steel would be probably laid down in the yard and then you bring it in, but it normally comes in on a just-in-time basis. So whatever we need tomorrow would be brought in the night before, so when the guys come in, forklift goes out, brings it in, or it just comes in on time. But we're waiting on the topography. There's a pond right in the middle of this place, which they dug out, I think, for the kids to go fishing.
Excuse me, it would be helpful if he comes to the microphone to speak and then you address in the microphone so we
I'm
could
sorry,
better,
this-
everyone can hear you.
Okay, what didn't you hear?
Well, when you have a question, yeah, just say who you are.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Ken Bluen, 6446 Lakeway Drive, right behind Amazon. My question was in reference to his plan. The show he gave was awesome. I appreciate it, love what he showed. The company, awesome. We're not against any development. Our concern down Lakeway Drive is, of course, truck traffic, noise, sound pollution, that type of thing. So my question was, which direction will the docks be facing? And could he give more ideas of what he planned to build on the property? So the background was good, but I would like some more information of what will this look like? What will the impact be for the people living down half a mile away? Not only truck traffic, but the visual and other things such of that nature. And yet he did answer the question quite well.
Do you want me to answer the question again?
Could everybody hear? I was just stating to address the
Right.
the
Into
team.
the microphone.
What I said was, we currently don't have a drawing which is not prepared by an architect on the basis that the topography of the area is not being given to us. There's about a 20-foot drop from east to west. There is a pond in the middle of there which needs to be filled in, because that would then restrict us currently going east to west. The way we see it is that the offices would be to the front on Ridgeland, and then the bays would go from east to west, so any loading or unloading would take place closest to 57. Now, initially, if you look at the building, the land itself, we would be about halfway down currently, but who's to say in 5-6 years that we don't want to double that? So then we would again go east. I don't think we can connect the buildings because there would be that much dirt to move over there to make them on the same level. It would be almost impossible or very expensive. So somehow we're going to have to probably have maybe 2 buildings in 10, 15 years' time. I don't know. But they would be on different levels.
Thank you.
But the plan would be to have everything towards 57.
All right, any other questions? All right, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Linear,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Bettenhausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Brophy,
Yes.
All right, can I have a favorable or unfavorable recommendation?
I'll make a favorable motion.
I'll second it.
All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Lindstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Bettenhausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Brophy,
Yes.
Commissioner Linear.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation and for providing us all the information and answering our questions.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, so.
Good luck with everything.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we will pass our recommendation on to the board next week. They'll be meeting October 26th at 6:30, and I would plan to attend that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, do we have any unfinished old business? I don't think so, right? All right, so now new business. We have Maura Ragoni here tonight with Robinson Engineering. She's going to do a presentation on stockpiling. Hello,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me here this evening. I am Maura Ragoni. I am a planner at Robinson Engineering. I have been working with staff on a number of developments, as well as then addressing some items in the zoning ordinance that we are looking to revise and amend. This is one of the number of revisions that we're entertaining, and this was one that we wanted to bring forth tonight, this evening. So this is relating to stockpiles. So I can kind of give a little brief overview on how we got here and what it is. So in your packet, I included a cover memo identifying the process of text amendments. I don't know how often you do them, but it is common as we have ever-changing needs in our communities and businesses and so forth. So it is common to do that. We evaluate the regulations that you have in place currently, and then we see where we may need to add some additional one. So staff had come forward noting some need to address stockpiles, particularly as it relates to those developments in the M2 district. So we did talk a lot back and forth on the best way to go ahead and address that, how it can be addressed. And one of the items that we did is identify regulations. So with different uses, you can identify specific regulations that will tell you what you can and cannot do. It's very specific to, say, like a fence, where we say where it can be located, how tall it can be. We can do the same thing with stockpiles as well. And because of the businesses that generally have stockpiles are in the M2 district, those are your more intense manufacturing. We are looking at adding those regulations specific to the M2 district. So basically kind of having those stockpiles for the M2s. Want to note that this is not addressing stockpiles that are associated with construction that you would see, that this is associated with a business that routinely has stockpiles on the property. So in doing a text amendment, what we do is we kind of scour out there, see what everyone else is doing. Someone's probably had this problem, so let's see what we can find. So we gathered enough information, and then we sift through and see what works for Monee, because every community is different and every community's needs are different. So before you this evening is a revision, a proposed amendment to we put it under 11-98-7, which is part of the M2 zoning district. And these outline where stockpiles are to be located. So what we've done is that they have to be a business that's associated, operations associated there. We've identified the minimum lot size, acreage, that you can have a stockpile. We identified that as 5 feet. We also looked at how close that stockpile can be from the property lines, identifying that of residential. So we want to make sure that's further away from residential, as well as then those from other properties. We also looked at how much of the property couldn't be occupied by stockpiles, so you don't have just property after property being consumed by that. We identified probably the most important 2 aspects are, one, how high the stockpile can be. We did talk at length on that, and the best height. Right now is proposed it's 10 feet. 10 feet would be the stockpile height, as talking with staff. We also included some other ones, and I won't go into great deal. A lot was identifying how we were going to screen this from property, how you can do that through fencing, also berming and landscaping and setting requirements that would be specific to stockpiles and where they're located, as well as then identifying, things like we want to know where the floodplain is, so we can make sure that they're staying out of it, as well as then looking for your groundwater by requiring a hard surface, that what they call it, the tilt pad, that is on a hard surface, so we can ensure there. But also identifying other state regulations that they have to maintain. There's IEPA that they would have to make sure that they have specific regulations. So even though they'd be required to be in compliance with it, it's just helpful to put it in your ordinance as well. And then some other items is that we'd want to understand kind of this operation plan, because a lot happens as noise and when it's occurring. So hours of operation, just kind of understanding when they identify when they're going to use the facility. Estimated number of trucks entering the facility, because that'll give kind of an idea of the intensity of it. And then identifying if they're going to be accepting material from third party. That will kind of then facilitate what kind of use is this? Is it just solely? Because a lot of the stockpiles are those for their own particular kind of furthering understanding the activity and the as well as in traffic. Simple things like dust and odor and so forth. And then also we want to attach a site plan to that, so we know exactly where we're identifying that, where the stockpiles are, ensuring that it's the proper distance away, as well as then also would identify berming and fencing and so forth. So it's kind of a lot of information in terms of stockpiling, but these are just some of the items in talking to staff that we wanted to highlight and put forward as part of regulations in the zoning ordinance.
Now, was height mentioned, is that something that staff felt that should be the maximum that we should go? Because I just know from the industry that I'm in that there are other villages that allow a little bit higher, because if you imagine they're dumping, if their height is 10 feet, everything else is so...
Correct.
It is kind of lower.
And that was part of one of the conversations that we did have is with staff was, what is it? We have a wide range of regulations that are out there. Some communities say 10. We had first said, what's the height of the buildings can be. Maybe we do that, or half. I know that it's in the M2 it gets pretty tall, so we don't want that. Was kind of trying to find that middle ground. So staff had noted 10 feet, but again, citing, that's where personal experience comes into play, and understanding the industries that, if 10 isn't going to be that, what would be reasonable? Because we want to make sure that we're putting a code in. When you revise a code, you want to make sure that it's going to be usable, and that the minute you put it in, you're not going to have problems. So we can definitely, if that's something we want to go back to staff with and identify, maybe understanding the needs of that. Is 10 feet enough? Is 10 feet too short? Maybe it kind of depends on where it's located.
Right.
We can look at that, maybe if they're further in, that they're not hovering, and maybe in the middle of the site, it's a little bit more. We can kind of look at that as a sliding scale.
I think 10 feet too would also be, especially if they have a lot of property, why should it be higher than 10 feet if they have the land to work with?
But if they
I've
only
just
have
talked
the
to somebody
minimum.
recently about that, and it wasn't going to be an issue because they had plenty of land to work with.
Yeah, it's not so much the land that works with too, it's also kind of the aesthetic type feel. What does it look like? You know, the unsightliness of it. And that's where some of it comes into. It's kind of this play where you have this balance of they have an operation, they have to maintain their operation, but depending on where they are, you also want to ensure that they're good neighbors and that they, you know, that they do, you know, that we just don't have these mounds of whatever it may be, you know, blanketing your landscape here in Monee. So it's striking that balance of both. And some of that might be addressed by topography. You know, we talked about that a lot at staff level, is that sometimes we'll look at allowing for a greater height, maybe because it slopes off. And they can give you, the applicant can provide you with that information to have that varying height. So that's something that if that is a concern about restricting it just to 10, that's something that we can definitely work with staff to see if we can come up with some more.
Isn't that dependent, the physicality of it is each pile, whatever it's made out of, whether it's gravel or salt or asphalt, recycling, right? It has its own angle of repose.
Mhm.
Meaning as it's put on the ground, it's going to find an angle between 32 and 45 degrees. Okay?
Mhm.
So let's suppose you have something with an angle of repose that's 45 degrees. A 10-foot pile isn't going to put very much on the ground.
Well, and
It's
that,
going to be stacked 10 feet certainly, but the base is not going to be anywhere.
well, and that,
So,
yeah, and
the
that,
way I look at it, it would be, okay, it's dependent on what's being stacked, all right?
Mhm.
And topography versus where you want the stack, how high you want the stack to be. And sometimes, you know, that is controlled by the amount that you have on the pile. The angle is fairly definite for everything that is stackable, you know, coal or salt or anything else. The base of the pile is dependent on the angle of repose.
and it kind of gets to what we're trying to achieve by this ordinance, and that's where we have to. You know, in speaking in general in stockpiles, outside of it being that associated with construction, it's what are we trying to achieve? So does it matter, I guess, to say what it is that we're stacking in terms of what are we trying to achieve? Like if trying to achieve aesthetically, it doesn't matter whether it's dirt or whether it's salt or whether it's concrete or whether it's asphalt. It doesn't matter what it is. Now we can take to, okay, do we have to think a little bit outside the box and maybe have that sliding scale of what it is? And maybe there's a little bit more that talks to these items that have a higher stack, but also how are we going to ensure that we're not creating an unsightly or any that it's still addressing all of these. So
Who wants to buy a piece of property with a 10-foot pile and there's nothing there? There's one truckload with the 10-foot pile.
and this doesn't mean that you only have one stockpile. You can have multiple stockpiles on there. Correct, and that's partly too is why you want that 5 acres. So you have a bigger land area that you're still able to provide the setback. So we can definitely look into seeing if there's a sliding scale. I don't know if we want to get so specific about the material, because if we're trying to address the visual and screening and so forth, that doesn't matter what we're screening. But in terms of, I do hear you in terms of the height. And in terms of that, it does matter from what you're saying in terms of material.
Otherwise, the pyramids would be tall and skinny, yeah, versus wide and tall.
Another concern is, and I only know this from experience, but do you think something should be addressed as far as, like, say it's mulch and it's only 10 feet high, but takes up, the whole 1/3 of their property, and now it's all clumped together and potentially a fire hazard, which I'm sure everyone's driven down 355 and seen mulch piles smoldering. So I don't know if that would be something that would be put in there. They have to be maintained and not let go to where there's potentially a fire or left to be hazardous. I don't know. These are just things that when I saw the whole stockpiling thing, I was like, oh my gosh, I know some issues with stockpiling. So.
No, and that's
Ask New
great.
Lennox. They'll tell you all about it.
Oh, last
Off of
year.
Laraway Road,
Yeah, that's another.
in Schoolhouse, there's
Yeah,
a
mulch it.
business that does
Fire.
mulch, and it was burning in January.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I drive by it quite often, and I think that's probably, it's not only burning in January, but also in a prime corner. So it's trying to cross that hybrid of knowing the industries that we want to, but also you want to, you want to have it in such a fashion that it's going to continue to track other businesses.
Right.
So definitely, as we look at, we were talking about an operation plan, that might be something that we can add in. Some, whatever the material is that it is in terms of hazard, in terms of kind of a safety, emergency safety plan of some sort that they
Right.
can go ahead and we can work with the appropriate agencies in terms of that to
I think
review
it took almost a month to put that fire out, the one in New Lenox.
I know it took some time. And what about like runoff and things like that from materials? Same thing in part of the operational planning. If they're stockpiling something that we have to worry about, some sort of runoff or
Yes. And that would go in line with understanding where the floodplain is, and also too with by identifying that it should be on some type of concrete. That would help that as well. But we can also provide something, and I'll work with the engineers to identify there's something. When you do development, you have a SWIP plan, right? So stormwater prevention and prevention plan. So we can look to see if there's something that's reasonable to put in place in terms of that as well.
Part of stockpiles, in particular in business, I equate that to a kitchen with eat and you cook. All right, if you got sloppy piles of raw material, you don't control what is going into the final product. Places like asphalt, for instance, they have a laboratory that's huge. They have state and federal specifications that all have to be checked before the asphalt goes on the ground. The control for that is how you control your stockpiles, right? If you bake, the control for your pie and your cake is how well you control the ingredients that go in. So the assumption, it probably is to the layperson that stockpiles are messy. Guys that come in, they make messy piles, they do this, do that, it's all wrong. For a good company to operate successfully and to make money, stockpiles are a high priority. In fact, they have numerous street sweepers in their operation to make sure that the piles are properly designated, right? They don't have a wish on this planet, in this universe, to mix piles, to keep messy piles.
Right. Go to Ozinga and see his operation. See what he's got for the various aggregates that he uses in his mixes. Because he uses different size stones. They have to be segregated, and
Each stone has a different
they have bins, I guess you could call them.
Bigger, it's taller.
Right.
Yeah, and that would be different. And a lot of these businesses that we're speaking of, that yes, they probably have all these in plans and they have a system. It's trying to make it across the board, regardless of who the business is, to make sure they're generally there's their operation. So it's trying to strike that balance of understanding the business needs, protecting property rights and those around, and also the aesthetic part of it. And some of it is just inherently just ensuring that they are in good faith, storing their stockpiles in those appropriate ways. So I'm hearing that probably the one item outside of this, emergency plans, stormwater prevention plan in some fashion, I'll speak to the engineers about that, is trying to find out about another way, maybe some type of a sliding scale in terms of that height that would be. So I'm hearing 10 is too small.
Just in my opinion, especially so I was looking at the berm information and, I don't know how to do that. Here it is. So again, being in the industry that I'm in, I know a little something about trees and berms and things like that. And just from the specifics on here, I think 10 would very well be hidden behind the trees. I mean, if they're planted now and they're 8 feet tall in 5 years, they'll grow another 4 or 5, maybe more feet, depending on the variety. So, I mean, I even think that going a little bit higher would still be hidden by the berm and the trees in the future. So,
The maturity,
yeah,
definitely.
So, you know, just from my thought, I thought, you know, the berm specifications would definitely cover higher if we went higher. But that's just my opinion.
No, and it's all valid, and that's why we have this. You know, this is part of the ordinance amendments. You kind of throw something out there and you start the dialogue and the conversation. I think we started at staff. I even think I'm trying to think. I think I was the one that said, I don't know, make it as high as the building. And they were, no. So, you know, it's like you try to strike that balance on what it is for that. So we definitely will. I know that we even talked about, you know, how the topography works. Does that give us some opportunity for that? So maybe it's, you know, X amount, you know, visible from the berm, or they, you know, if they want extra or that, they may do a sightline analysis or something like that. That could be on the onus of them.
Right.
Because they also have to show that they want to have it. And what also happens is, just speaking to the comments about these businesses, they know what they want. If they're a good business and they know what they want, this probably is something that they're accustomed to in other areas of doing and addressing anyway.
All right. We're good with questions? All right. Well,
When
thank
might
you.
this be ready?
Well, I will go back now and address the 2 items. Probably the easiest items are that relating to the emergency plan and the stormwater plan. I will go back and chat with staff to see if we can come back. I think that the plan was to bring this, and I'm looking back, I think in within the next month or so, because the text amendment needs a public hearing before the plan commission, and then as a recommending body to the village board. So I think within the next month, we're looking to bring it back, provided that we do have kind of a sound understanding of where that height should be. And I think if it's too far off or that, you know, we can always bring it back for another work session. But I think if the height is the one thing, and I know that's one thing that staff and I talked probably the most at length about is how high, right? So as long as we can get it together and notice it in the paper. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate all your work on that.
Oh, no problem. And as I mentioned, there's some other ones that we will be working, so you will probably see me again as well.
All right. All right. So I think that was it. So I just need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Trevino,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Bettenhausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Brophy,
Yes.
Commissioner Linerer,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindstrom,
Yes.
7:24 PM.